Hi, everyone. I think we're going to go ahead and get started. We may have a few people filtering in late, but given the time, I think we'll just go ahead and get going. Thanks for coming out today, and welcome to our online audience as well. My name is Logan McCoy. I'm the student coordinator of the GE Colloquium in Sustainability Leadership, a program of the Yale Center for Business and Environment that brings business and thought leaders to campus to discuss the challenges and opportunities inherent in integrating sustainability more holistically within business. Today we're thrilled to be welcoming Dr. Neil Hawkins, Chief Sustainability Officer and Corporate Vice President of Environmental Health and Safety of the Dow Chemical Company. A few housekeeping notes quickly. After Dr. Hawkins' presentation, we'll be having a period of Q&A, and since we're live streaming the event, if you ask a question, please press down the mic button in front of you. And then we should wrap up with plenty of time for people to make it to their 1 o'clock classes. So we've hosted many dynamic and inspiring speakers as part of this colloquium in the past, and I've been particularly excited to host Dr. Hawkins today. I was fortunate enough to talk with him over coffee this morning, and he said something that struck me, and that's that chemistry is in everything. It's in the clothing we wear, the cars we drive, the food we eat, in this classroom around us. And so as a chemical company, the decisions that Dow makes in terms of sustainability have far-reaching impacts on our economy, our communities, and on the planet. So when Dow announced an evolution in its sustainability goals, we found that it was something worth paying close attention to. So a few words about Dr. Hawkins. In addition to his work at Dow, he's a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, a member of the International Olympics Committee Sustainability and Legacy Commission, chairman of World Business Council for Sustainable Development's Green and Natural Infrastructure Committee, and a member of the Committee on Global Policy and Government Affairs of the National Academy of Sciences. Additionally, he was recently appointed by the United Nations Environment Program as the first business representative to the high-level group of GEO6 Global Environment Assessment. He holds a doctor's and master's degree from Harvard University and is also an alumnus of Georgia Tech. So without any further ado, please help me in welcoming Dr. Neil Hawkins.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much for the warm welcome. It's such a delightful day outside. Being able to walk over from the other building, experiencing the campus. I haven't been here at Yale for probably a decade, and it's just very nice to be back here again. So thank you for the invitation. Now, what I want to cover today is this. I want to get at what is the role of one company in helping the world achieve sustainable development. Okay, and it's something I know a fair amount about because I'm going to address my own company, the Dow Chemical Company, and give you some sense of how one company has been at this for a while, how one company has approached it. And in the case of the Dow Chemical Company, as Logan said, because we're a chemistry company, virtually every value chain is touched by chemistry in some way, shape, or form. So if you can have alignment of chemical company to helping solve challenges, you can impact many different vectors. So we'll go through that a little bit. I want to give you some of our history and how we've approached goal setting. We're a company that works very well when everybody in the company, and we're about 50,000 people right now, when people know what we're trying to solve, what hill we're trying to take. And so goal setting works for us pretty well, as long, in addition to values and other cultural norms. So we'll go through some slides, and then I'm looking forward very much to questions. So please be thinking of questions. We had a session with some students this morning, and they had some really tough questions. Good ones, but tough ones, and got really into some interesting points. So be thinking ahead to what questions you want to ask, and I will do my best to answer them. So I advance here myself. Is that how it works? Okay. I may have taken it off of the clickable mode.
I am not sure.
There we go. Old stuff, but let's just run through it. So we're going above 8 billion people. We're going to have more food of higher quality. We're going to have more energy, hopefully more sustainable energy, but there will be a need for more energy over time. And more water, especially drinking water. Water is a special case because the world's full of water, but you don't have the right quality water in the right place. So actually figuring that challenge out will be a big one in and of itself. A little bit about Dow. We're almost 120 years old. We're getting up there close to that. We have been surviving as a publicly traded company for a long time. We're in the middle of buying Dow Corning, acquiring them in a restructuring, and then we'll go through a merger with DuPont, which is one of the largest mergers ever. So you'll read about that, and later on, if there's a specific question, I'm happy to take it. But that's a merge and spin. So the Dow Chemical Company and DuPont will merge, and then there'll be a spin of 3 different companies publicly traded. And at that time, there'll be a Dow, there'll be a DuPont, and there'll be other companies. So we can talk about that more later if you'd like. $49 billion in revenue, roughly, about 50,000 employees. Virtually every value chain you can think of we're involved in the food, mobility, all the consumer products, packaging. We sell product in virtually every country, and we manufacture and manage products in about 100 countries. So what kind of markets are we working towards? And this slide, I think, does a pretty good job of linking the global challenges, which I highlighted in a slide earlier, with market opportunities and where a chemistry company has a role to play. So water, getting the right quality water to where it's needed. It's a marketing issue when you're a technology provider. But within that, we have membrane technology, reverse osmosis. We have ultrafiltration. And we're a research-based water technology company, which means we're actually still trying to improve in fundamental ways their performance. We're involved in other ways. Energy and climate change, very big sector. And if you expand those two to include infrastructure, that's a key area that we're focusing on. But getting the world to more sustainable energy faster is where we're focused. And don't forget, and there on the right side, you see building insulation. We're a leading insulation company, and I'm talking about advanced insulation for creating net zero homes, innovative insulation for appliances, etc. Insulation almost always is the most cost-effective way to reduce greenhouse gases. And it's going to be a long time, I would guess, before that McKinsey analysis is no longer true. So we should always be thinking about getting more energy efficient early on. But within this energy area, we're also working in structural adhesives for automobiles. I think many of you heard about the F-150 truck, the Ford F-150. It took out 750 pounds of product, and a lot of people attribute that to aluminum. And that is a key part of it. But the real unknown fact is that without structural adhesives like what we produce, you can't link aluminum to steel because they can't be welded, and you can't link those materials to composites and plastics. So we have structural adhesives that allow lightweighting. I saw another one the other day, the Chrysler Pacifica referenced, and again, lightweighting of vehicles is energy efficiency, and that's very important. We all want to get to an electric vehicle that's autonomous in the future, but in the meantime, we need to get as much out of every gallon of fuel as we can. Food and agriculture, big area. We're in the agriculture business in seeds and crop chemicals. But one area that people don't focus on as much, and perhaps here at Yale you do, is food waste. And in the supply chain for food, you're looking at about 40% wasted food. So food packaging is really a key area. We're the leading food packaging company in the world. We work with all the major brands on packaging for food. And not only is it to be efficacious packaging, but also we're looking at how to recycle more. So we're at the front end of the value chain as well as the back end of the value chain, bringing it back in and making it useful. Consumer and lifestyle, the whole population of the planet's middle class is growing. So you're seeing a lot of growth in products and leapfrogging of technologies that's going on. We need to be sure we're collectively producing ever more sustainable consumer products, be they used in cleaning or be they used in cell phones or whatnot. Okay, just turning to the goals area, I would submit to you that we've been working about 25 years consciously around sustainability and sustainable development. So let's say 5 years after the Brundtland Commission. And in 1992, we formed our advisory council, our external advisory council for sustainability, had a slightly different name then. But that group in 1992, very distinguished, former EPA administrator, journalist, etc., they were giving us the advice we needed to get better. And that was a bold move to set that group up, and it's worked continuously since then. But one of the things that group did, the Sustainability External Advisory Council, and there's a former member here, Julia, has been a member of that group in the past. And I think you're a visiting professor now? A visiting scholar. That group told us you need to really get after your own footprint. So this was 25 years ago. You really need to get after your own footprint and make that better. And that led, and do so in a transparent way. Okay? Get after your footprint and be transparent. Sounds easy, but 25 years ago, that was unheard of. And we set our goals for 2005 in the mid-90s. We created a culture around public reporting in the company and public accountability for goals that's still in place today. That was a huge change for us. So that first period, which was about making ourselves better, even more than getting better, we started becoming more transparent. In the middle of the last decade, so let's say around 2005, 2006, we set our 2015 sustainability goals, which just ended at the end of last year. We continued our footprint reduction, but then we added the concept of handprint, which is let's have our products do as much as possible to help solve challenges, not be challenges. Okay, so that was the key addition in that second set of goals. I'll explain a little bit more about those, but it was really focused on getting enhancing the alignment of our R&D to helping solve and optimize solution provision. And then last year we announced our 2025 goals here on the right. So we continued again with footprint reduction. We continued maximizing handprint, but we added the concept of blueprint. And so we now have footprint, handprint, blueprint as our concept that we've aligned all our employees around. And blueprint really is focused on the sustainable development challenges, how big they are, and the realization that no one entity, Dow Chemical on its own can't solve these challenges, no government can solve these challenges. What can begin to solve the challenges is a collaboration around different challenges with prototypes that can be scaled up. So that's what we'll talk about in that area. So in our first set of goals, you perhaps may have seen this before, but I'll just emphasize it. It really delivered big for waste reduction and energy reduction and water reduction. So huge reductions, 1.6 billion pounds of waste reduced, 900 trillion BTUs, which is the same as 8 million single-family homes for a year. That's what we reduced. 183 billion pounds of water, and we reduced injury and illness cases by 84%. And it's not that we were unsafe before. I want to be clear about that. But we said we're going to get on a path of virtually eliminating injuries. And so the bottom line is huge. During that 10-year period, we reduced more than 10,000 injuries. That's an enormous number. And you see the other numbers. And for these types of goals, we saved $5 billion on a $1 billion investment. Big money. So these first set of goals attacked a lot of low-hanging fruit probably, but delivered very big to the bottom line. This goes right into profitability. So that's what we did in the first set of goals. In the second set of goals, we were able to boost our sales of products advantaged by sustainable chemistry up above 20%, and we had established a definition for that. We were very pleased with that movement. That's a measure of our R&D collaboration around sustainable chemistry. But we continued also delivering in all of these other areas, continued delivering energy savings, safety, performance, et cetera. And our combined return across the 20-year period is $6 billion. So it went smaller in the second period. The second period was smaller than the first, which is what you would expect. Okay, whenever you do these kinds of goals, you have low-hanging fruit early on, and then if you continue down those same paths, it's just a point where you don't get as much back. And so companies that have not done anything to date, more than likely, if they go through the same journey, they're going to be able to find a lot of savings over a period of time and then get into diminishing returns. The other point I would make here is that when you're a large user of energy or other materials, the amount of savings can be very large to the bottom line. And so you always have to maintain that focus. So going on to our 2025 goals, we have this tagline of redefining the role of business in society. Okay, it's not with hubris that that's stated. It's a desire to be part of redefining how business engages in sustainable development. And so our goals are created and crafted around these topics. The 7 goal areas we have, and I have a slide on each of them. Leading the blueprint, I already explained what blueprint means. It means prototyping through collaboration to different opportunities for solving challenges. Breakthrough innovation, really focusing our investment in research and innovation around ever more sustainable products. And I don't think I'll mention it later, so I should mention it here. Our R&D spend is about $1.5 billion per year, which is equivalent to all U.S. universities researching in these same areas combined. So it's a lot of research. So we feel we have a responsibility to make sure that we're focusing that on ever more sustainable products and solving as many of these challenges as we can. Increasing confidence in chemical technology, valuing nature. I'll remark about that more. Jen Molnar happens to be here today from the Nature Conservancy, so if I say something I shouldn't or get it wrong, you can correct me. But that's a very exciting goal area for us. Circular economy is an area that we're already drilling down in and really working. As I said, we're at the front end of the value chain and at the tail end. And you need chemistry in both. Engaging employees for impact, I'll explain that a bit more. And then world-leading operations performance, which again is the footprint area, but we have added a few twists in there that really will push us to become even better. Okay, there we go. If you think about these conceptually, the goal 2, 6, and 7 really focus on unleashing people and science to solve challenges. We have this nature area. And then the third area is really about collaboration, big time collaboration, blueprint, circular economy, and increasing confidence in chemical technology. So let me just show a few more slides, and we'll begin moving more towards Q&A in a few minutes here. We did not set these goals up to align to the Sustainable Development Goals. I want to be very clear about that. We started a process about 5 years ago of developing the goals that involved about a little more than 1,000 stakeholder engagements and listening sessions. However, at the same time we were doing our goals, the UN Sustainable Development Goals were coming together. So what we did is we took those goals and mapped them into our goals or mapped our goals into their goals. Very strong overlap, which is very reaffirming. Leading the blueprint, there are 17 Sustainable Development Goals. You see how important innovation is to solving many of the Sustainable Development Goals. A little less in the circular economy, a little less in valuing nature. These are more specific areas, but creating confidence in chemical technology actually maps pretty closely to innovation, getting our employees out, and then world-leading operations. So I wanted to show that. You will see references to the Sustainable Development Goals along the bottom of these slides as I move through them. So leading the blueprint, we've had some very large collaborations in the last few years, probably the biggest and most impactful being the TNC Dow collaboration. What we're saying in this goal is that we will put our effort into finding new prototypes for solving key big challenges. And by the end of the 10-year period, we will have 10 collaborations that are thought of being very successful in helping provide solutions. The key thing here is, and people ask me, well, what are these 100 dialogues and 10 impactful collaborations? Why do you have these sorts of numbers? Well, we need to give a sense of scale to all our Dow employees. And we have many employees that send us ideas. Hey, I think we need to work on this. Do you support me working with this government, with this university, with this NGO? So they know this is out there. So they're nominating ideas. But this 100 versus 10 thing is something I put in there. And you don't really get to an impactful collaboration, I mean a truly impactful collaboration, unless you and the partners understand each other. These are not things that just sort of pop up. You don't write a check and have a collaboration. You have to have common goals and a desire to solve narrow areas together. And so we're really going to put a key focus on having dialogue, many of which won't lead to a specific collaboration, but we're hopeful that they'll lead to fewer collaborations of very large impact. Breakthrough innovation, we have screens in our innovation portfolio that we're implementing to assure in different areas that our investments in innovation are ever more sustainable in these different areas, what you would hope for. Advancing a circular economy, this is a very challenging area. There are many examples of where loops are being closed now, so that's good. But when you look at it on a planetary scale across all the value chains, this is a scale issue. So we've got to find ways to really make inroads on the waste that's being currently generated, but also, very importantly, on the design up front so that the products are more recyclable, reusable at end of life than they currently are. That can only be done through really significant collaborations. And so we've committed in our goals that we will do at least 6 major circular economy projects. So this is a very specific area of breakthrough collaborations. Valuing nature. I call this our $1 billion goal. And there is actually $1 billion listed there. What we're saying is we are going to find projects in the company or that touch our company where we can make interventions that deliver $1 billion in value to the company and at the same time build nature. And I'm going to give you an example here in a minute. But I'm very optimistic we can move to get this amount or get a high dollar amount in trying. And it matters not just that we hit this bottom line result. It matters because if we can demonstrate that businesses taking care of nature adds to the bottom line, then more businesses will do it. So I think there's a lot at stake here beyond Dow Chemical. And we just happen to have more experience in it because we've done the collaboration with TNC over the last 5 years. We've had our own experience as a company that I will share a little bit about. But I believe moving nature into that bucket of footprint improvements that we talked about earlier in our first set of goals, that everybody believes saving energy, yes, helps the bottom line. I think if we can get valuing nature into that bucket for more companies, it will make a big difference. Increasing confidence in the safe use of chemical technology. I'm sure there are people in this room that are not fans of chemicals or chemistry. What I would say to you is this. Chemistry is critical to solving these challenges. If you don't like certain chemicals, and you may have very good reasons for it, replacement of chemicals involves chemistry. Okay, we have got to have the chemistry toolbox to help solve sustainable development challenges. But right now, there's a lot of concern or mistrust of chemistry and chemicals. And we're going to put a big effort in the next decade, and we're already starting, and Paul Anastas and I were talking a little bit before we came over here. We have got to put together the right dialogues, the right collaborations, so that the confidence of people in chemistry can be raised, because we all need chemistry to succeed in solving these challenges. Engaging employees for impact. This one we call our billion-person goal. Okay, so we have the billion-dollar goal. What we're saying in this is we have 50,000 employees and more than that in retirees. We want to unleash our employees to actually, through their own volunteer efforts, sharing their expertise, impact 1 billion people positively. We have a very large effort already in STEM education, where we are out working in classrooms and with teachers, with curriculums, all kinds of stuff. So we have a good effort in STEM. We have sustainable development projects built into our leadership training as part of our Dow Academy for our future leaders. And they go overseas and work with NGOs on projects on the ground. So we're going to expand the amount of effort going into these activities. One, because I think our employees, newer and ones that have been with us a long time, they want to have those opportunities. So it's very positive from that point of view. Two, very impactful for recruiting. You know, and people want to join companies where their personal passions are also recognized. But three, in terms of marketing, you get people out in the world experiencing what people are experiencing on the ground. It stimulates ideas. How can I bring my lab work to actually help solve challenges? You put people on the ground in Indonesia or Ghana or various places, they come back different employees. So we're very enthusiastic about that. Then on WorldLeading operations performance, this is the classic footprint area. The one thing, and I don't know if I have it listed there, we have some really good, I think there are 30 sub-goals within this goal. But one of them relates to resource conversion efficiency. And what we've said is we are going to assure that we are the best users and converters of resources in our critical technologies. Because the world is in a diminishing supply of materials. And so companies that convert more, they make less waste, they are using less energy, they have less emissions. We want to always be at the forefront, and in many technologies we are. But as a concept, we want to earn our right to be preferential converters of materials. But we're going to continue our focus in safety. That's very important in an industry like ours. We've added a health and wellness rating, and we have very healthy employees compared to average worker employee groups. But we have many other dimensions we're adding to that. This is actually pretty exciting, and at some point, I'm sure someone will want to document, because we do a lot of measurement. 20% reduction in our water intake also. Let me just turn to the valuing nature goal. Just talk about that a little bit, given that many of you are involved in the Environment and Forestry Department. What we did in our collaboration with the Nature Conservancy was focus on business decision-making relative to ecosystem services. So business decision-making. Businesses are different than governments. Okay, if you're the US government, you look at the Mississippi River or Missouri River, and you're making decisions around flooding and various things. Okay, but if you have a chemical plant sitting in Memphis, that's a very different decision than what the US government's doing. Or if you have a chemical plant on the Yangtze River, it's very different than looking at a whole river scale. So what we did over the last few years is really focus on how do you build an appreciation for the value of nature into a business decision. We've found ways to do it. We've created tools to do it. We're going to bring this into our capital process. And so when stakes early on, when projects are being looked at, we're going to ask the nature question, and we're going to work it through our whole system. We'll be trying to find $1 billion in value, and I'll explain why I think that's possible, I think on the next slide. And then last, we're also going to build value of nature into our R&D capital and real estate processes as well. Real estate, you might say, well, why would you care? I mean, if you're a global chemical company like Dow, we own a lot of property on water, on rivers, on oceans. And so understanding the value of nature for the company, but also the communities, is very important. And that's what we're referring to on real estate. We're not talking buildings. We're talking pieces of land. We have an example, and we actually published a case study on this. We had an economist come in on a sabbatical, and she studied this with our experts. More than 10 years ago, we had a courageous engineer, and I say courageous because these kinds of things weren't being done. He said, you know, I can pour a bunch of concrete and put in a new part of this wastewater plant, or I can rejuvenate and rebuild a wetland, which will be helpful to the biodiversity of the area, for less money. And he first convinced his management to do it. Then he convinced the regulators to do it, which was not easy, because they said, hey, we've never had one of these things. Not sure if it works. If it doesn't work, we're not going to let you run the plant, et cetera. So it took guts. When all was said and done, we saved on that project $40 million in capital and more than $200 million in operating costs. So that one water treatment plant example, and it's still operating today, providing all kinds of good natural areas for birds and other critters to go in and out of on the Gulf Coast. That project is a $200 million plus project. So if I'm able to find a few of those, we'll be able to get to the billion. But we're not just working on those kind of projects, we're working on many different kinds of projects. I have other ones where we're more in the $20 million range that have been successful. So I believe we can do it. we are working with the Nature Conservancy, as I've said, and we have various tools that and by the way, if anybody wants a copy of the paper on the wetland, be happy to send it to you later. With the Nature Conservancy, we've worked on a variety of tools. The EASY tool, which is the Ecosystem Services Inventory and Identification and Inventory. We're going to use this tool on all of our plants, or plant sites. We have done many other tools through this and have published many papers looking at wetlands and their value in surge protection, because we have a lot of plants on the Gulf Coast. We've been looking at trees as a means to help with VOCs and VOC reduction, because down in Texas, we're talking tens of millions of trees have been lost due to drought. So if we can ever come up with reforestation methods that also are helpful to abating ground level ozone ultimately, there's some real interesting things. So out of all of those, there are many papers we'd be happy to share. And Jen is an alum of this program, and you're working here collaboratively. But all of that work combined led to our 2025 goal. So there's a lot of thought that went into this. Can I get you at the very end? Okay. I'm almost there. You'll be first. Another example, just in this area of circular economy, we did some work with Citrus Heights, California, because actually getting non-recyclable plastic into a useful form and then doing something with it. So most of what we produce is recyclable, because we're primarily a polyethylene producer with many different kinds of catalysts that make the polyethylene do different functionalities. But at the end of the day, it's all polyethylene. There are non-recycled plastics, though, that need to be addressed. So we did a project with Citrus Heights, and we're about to do another one where we brought a partner that would take the material and then produce synthetic crude oil as the output. We worked with the city itself and other partners. It wasn't just Dow, but we spearheaded this in how to do the separations effectively, measuring what worked and what didn't work. This was one program. We're about to take it, and this was pyrolysis. That's how the conversion was made. But we're going to scale this up to another bigger program and then see how far that can go. But our focus on the design end is around creating packages and materials that are recyclable at end of life. And then last, in water. Water in the circular economy, I was speaking to a different group and that were very focused only on materials and circular economy, but there's really an opportunity in water as well. And we're one of the leading producers of membranes and other technologies for cleaning water. And like I said earlier, we do research in this area, and just in the last few years, we were able to create a membrane product that is 40% more effective in desalination and water cleaning at 30% lower energy consumption per liter. And so water treatment, its Achilles heel is energy. Okay, you hear about energy-water nexus. Well, that's an area that we're focused on. But making water cleaning lower energy is a very important thing. We also have done a lot in integrating our plants. We have a plant in the Netherlands that we, over a period of time, worked to integrate with a local municipal water treatment system, we're recycling there 10 million liters per day of water that would have been treated and consuming energy, but isn't now. So it reduced the carbon footprint dramatically, but it takes scale. If you want to actually make a difference for CO2 in the air, you've got to get to these big projects. And so we're looking for the right integration projects. We're looking at technology. We're looking at big, but we're also looking at small. During the California crisis over the last few years, we were doing a lot within buildings, looking at recycling of water. So we're in this for the long haul on the water side. We have ongoing social media discussions. Dow 2025 with the hashtag is how we keep track of it. But we have ongoing discussions in all of these areas. I've only really given you just a thumbnail of what we're up to, but I wanted to focus on the goal story a little bit because that is something that is leverageable to many different companies. So, thank you. I'd like to take a few questions. And this gentleman is first.
Thank you. My name is Fabian. I'm a first-year student at the School of Management, and I want to follow up on the valuing nature part. So I recently spoke with a manufacturer that is creating a consumer product that has a harmful byproduct, a chemical that goes into the nature and stays in nature. This has been known for the last 15, 20 years. Still, it is being used because it's essential for a central part of the product, and there is no solution, no alternative. That's kind of what the company is saying. There is no alternative, so we keep on using that. So then I spoke with the chemical company, and they say, well, yeah, 95% of the use is harmful use, but there is 5% harmless use of the chemicals, so we have a right, we have a justification to produce this, and we will still sell it to anyone who wants it because it is not our responsibility to see where this chemical goes. So this is clearly the task and the challenge of the manufacturer. So given this challenge, this kind of going around, what kind of price tag do you put on nature when the pure business case for you is NPV negative, while at the same time there is a clear harmful output to nature?
Yeah, that one's a complicated question. I think first off, I want to go all the way back to regulation in this case. The regulatory structure in the United States for chemicals is not strong. It's quite old. And in fact, we've been actively pushing for a new chemicals regulation for about the last decade. And it looks like this year it's possible that can get done. So a new TSCA. I think there has to be a floor of minimum requirements that all players need to meet that assures public health. Okay. Now you're raising beyond public health. You're raising ecosystem health. Beyond that, I think there are few situations that there's not an alternative. So then you get into, well, how much is somebody willing to pay for the alternative? And without really digging into the specifics of that, and I'd be happy to talk to you afterwards, it's hard to say how that would be approached. But there aren't many situations where there are no alternatives. I would say that, for our own products or for other people's products. So if someone's saying there are no alternatives, that doesn't sound quite right to me. But I don't know the specific situation. I do think there has to be a floor that everybody meets that protects public health and the environment, though. You have a question?
My name is Megan. I'm a third-year joint between the business school and the forestry school, and thank you for coming. It's really great to have you here. My question is about the merger between Dow and DuPont. And so historically, as we've seen greater consolidation in the ag inputs industry, we've also seen consolidation in agribusiness in terms of production methods, varietals, which has led to great efficiencies, but also some environmental challenges. And there's a growing demand for a greater diversity of solutions and those that are maybe less input heavy. And I'm wondering, with the forthcoming merger, which is going to create another huge, an even bigger kind of ag inputs company, how are they thinking about diversity and meeting kind of the suite of solutions or the demands out there, even in small markets?
Yeah, I'm not an expert in the ag area, so I can't really address that specifically. But I think in general, larger R&D organizations, larger suites of products should, be the goal of a combined effort of that sort. But I'm not I'm not an expert in that, so I really shouldn't comment. Okay. Yes.
Well, I'm Alyssa. I'm a second-year MBA student related to the merger. Again, I'm just wondering how, so I think it was goal 7, the operational performance goals, how for a company like DuPont, which has been in the news recently regarding Teflon and employee health issues and community health issues in communities around plants in which Teflon is produced, how does Dow make sure that those issues will be resolved in order to meet your goals when the two companies merge?
Yeah, well, we'll be merging and then ultimately spinning off 3. But I think during this period when we're one company, there'll be a very strong look at best practices of each company. And I would expect that the best practices of each in this process safety area, environmental area, would become part of the culture of the new companies. But we're not going to, I think what you'll see is you won't see a joint organization. When we merge, we'll be working towards the spinoffs. But I do think we'll share information and best practices throughout that period.
Hi, Neil. I'm Marion Chertow. I'm a professor appointed both at the Environment School and here. And I wanted to just get your opinion about something that some of my students have been taking a look at, and that is the notion of planetary boundaries. I'm sure you're familiar with it. And they've been trying to apply this to single companies. And it's a huge leap, and we know that. We knew that when we started. It's one of the students. And yet, is it a valuable leap? That's kind of my question to you. Is it just too big to think about the whole planet, even with a very large and an important company with respect to environmental performance, as Dow is, and even Dow and DuPont even more so? So just, you've thought about it, just asking you to share your thoughts.
Well, I sort of got at this a little bit in the previous discussion of nature and models that are regional, landscape models. You're even going one step further, which is planetary models. I tend to want to work in actionable spaces. And so if you're outside of regulation, so if you're in a discussion that's outside regulation, I think the best models for action are more narrow. I think going planetary is very difficult for a company to manage in absent regulation. So if you take something like climate change, yes, everybody needs to be working in this, and we are. We have our own goals for our own emissions. We also have goals within these goals around solutions, and we're doing advanced insulation, lightweighting vehicles, many things that relate to climate change. But there's not a good substitute for a lack of global policy or significant regional policy. It's hard for companies to make individual decisions, sole individual decisions in the context where nobody knows the competitive landscape at all. So I think the key thing is I believe we'll make faster progress where the actions are natural. So as I mentioned with nature, I think the more we show there's a business value positive proposition for companies, not negative, which many companies might assume today. I think that's in the short term, 10 years, though that leads to more action. You have a follow-up.
You gave it, just quickly, you gave us, obviously the company put a lot of work into aligning your new goals with SDGs. And those are kind of planetary goals. They're not like the planetary boundaries exactly that are, tend to be more biophysical, but that's a global effort, and I'm been surprised that so many companies have been wanting to do that, been making the same sorts of boxes that you have.
Yeah, but I don't think one company, except maybe in some very odd circumstances, actually moves the needle on a given sustainable development goal. You want to make sure you're helping move it to the positive, but to actually move the needle, that's where you get into these challenges I would call blueprint challenges, where you need the government of a nation or a region with NGOs, with companies who have something to contribute to helping solve it. I think it's much tougher on a global planetary scale to find that. Now, I may be wrong, and I'm very willing to be wrong on that, but I'm trying to mobilize action, not just for my company, but from other companies. And I think the bigger the landscape, sometimes the harder it is to motivate action. I think we're down to what, one question? Okay, I'm being told we have one question. This question.
Thank you for coming. I'm interested in the wetland example that you presented, and I'm thinking about how the processes that Dow has put in place to gather all possible ideas from people kind of in the field who have the knowledge necessary to come up with something like the wetland solution, and what that selection funnel looks like for Dow, how all those ideas are thought about as they make it through to eventually a handful of them being implemented. So I'm wondering if you could sketch what that funnel looks like for us, and where within that you see room for improvement. So is it that there's not enough ideas getting in, that not enough of them are generating positive NPV for the firm? Kind of where could you improve that process?
Well, we're just getting started on the process, so I want to be clear about that. What we did initially is we went through and looked at all our current capital projects, so the ones that are in flight. So we took stock of what those look like, and there are thousands and thousands of these things. For a company like ours, it's a lot of projects. So we got a good handle on that. Then we worked backwards into the evaluation of new projects piece. So we know how we'd want to ask questions to get those identified early. I think until we do this for a year or two, we won't have a good sense of the tweaks to make it better. At the same time we're doing that, we have a portfolio of 20 to 30 projects that we believe, because we understand them and know about them, could yield very successful results for nature and for the company. So we're working those, but we identified those over the last few years. One of the problems, though, in this space is some of these projects take a long time. So if tomorrow we decided to do something like sea drift at a site, it might take 4 years to get the Army Corps of Engineers and the regulators to agree to do it. So that's one reason why I'm concerned about getting a fast start. because a good idea today we may not see for 6 years from now. So the time lag in nature-related projects is high. And I think if I were setting this up with another company, I would think about how you can move faster so that the regulatory steps don't slow you down too much. If you have a timeline that, and we do because we have goals at the end. If you don't have a timeline, it doesn't really matter. You just want to get it done when you can get it done. We're trying to hit some goals. Okay, so I'm done, and I appreciate very much your coming. Be happy to talk to people afterwards as well.